Hello, my name is Curtis Dykstra, Parks Naturalist and Program Supervisor with Ottawa County Parks. The 2025 Coffee with the Birds Mug Club Photo Contest had a whopping 167 entries. Each year it is becoming increasingly difficult to sort through and judge so many great photos, narrowing it down to only 4 honorable mention winners and 1 grand prize winner to go on our 2026 Mug Club member mug. To highlight the amazing winning photos, we've interviewed all 5 winners. June Kuiper, our grand prize winner, and our honorable mention winners, Ryan Bebej, Janet Lewis, Matt Ehinger, and Lennea Roon, asking them to give us a glimpse into the story behind their amazing photos. We'll start with the grand prize winner, June Kuiper. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm June Kuiper. I'm from Holland, Michigan, and I took the picture of the great blue heron at Kuiper Trails. So I remember this day really well because it was Valentine's weekend, and it was a cold day. It was like 20 degrees, and it was fairly windy, and it was drizzly, a little overcast sky, so it was like a perfect day to go out, right? Well, you know, if you're a birder and you've got cabin fever, it kind of is okay to go out. So my husband and I, we bird together, and we decided to go out to Kuiper Trails to see what we could find. When we got there, we found that first pond there on the south side was completely frozen over, except for these like 2 little spots of open water. And on one of those, there was this lone great blue heron just standing there. And I'm like, wow, okay. I had hopes some point it was going to be plunging in to get its next meal. So I found my angle, and I was really happy to have warm clothing on that day. I had my Stormy Crommer hat on, so I was ready to be cold. And I just sat down in the pathway right there in the snow. This experience really actually became like a test of what they call like the patience of a birder. So, you know, it's that well of waiting and endurance and observation and sitting still and in one spot for a long time and just being like quiet. So I sat there, and I was waiting like 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 minutes, and this heron was like the epitome of stillness. It didn't matter the cold. It didn't matter that these harsh winds were like tugging at its feathers. It was locked and loaded, and its eyes were like staring at that water. And I'm like, oh, wow. At that point, my own endurance for the cold was kind of waning. And so my fingers were frozen and felt numb. And I was like really thankful to have my monopod because it was holding the weight of the camera so that I could sit there for that long. And so I found myself like starting to think less about the photo and more about the great blue heron. It was like I started to feel sorry for it. Like, what are the chances of like a fish swimming under that little teeny hole of water and it being able to get a meal? And I said, how long has it been since it had its last meal? And I was silently rooting for it to be successful, you know. I started to read up a little bit on the great blue heron, and I learned that in some cultures it's known as it's a symbolism of luck. And I thought, in the moment's notice, as I was sitting there, it plunged into the water, it nabbed the bass, it stood up, held it in its beak for just a little while, flipped it up, and gobbled it down. And I thought, what a lucky day for the both of us. The great blue heron got its meal, I got my shot, and really, this experience was quite fascinating because it was a reminder from nature just to be calm and in the moment, and that patience and endurance really does pay off. You know, I entered a great blue heron in this photography contest way back in 2018, which is kind of what got me started with photography is birding. And I look at that picture and then I look at the one that I submitted now, and I just feel like it's been a great learning experience in how to become a better photographer and how to become a better birder and a lover of nature. I want to thank the Hemlock Crossing staff and the Ottawa County Parks for this recognition. I really feel privileged and blessed to be part of such a great community that's watching out for our nature and our birds.
My name is Ryan Bebej, and I'm from Georgetown Township, and I took the photo of the ruby-crowned kinglet at Stuyvesant Trails. I took the photo of the kinglet on Good Friday, and the reason that I remember that is because it was one of those rare days when my kids were both in school and my wife had something else going on, and so I had basically marked that day on the calendar as one when I would be able to go birding since I didn't have any classes to teach on that day. And I remember leading up to that day that the weather was not looking good. And there was rain in the forecast, and I thought I might not be able to get out and really do much. But when I woke up that morning, it looked like the rain was going to hold off just long enough. And my first stop was actually at Upper Maketawa Natural Area. And I spent about 2 hours there and had, almost 50 species of bird, including some ruby-crowned kinglets there. But I just had those fleeting glimpses of them where you see them for a second in the tree and then they sort of flit along and you kind of lose track of them. I could tell that the clouds were starting to come in and I better get back to my car really quick. And just as I got back to my car, it started pouring rain. And so I'm sitting in my car wondering if I'm done for the day. And so I pulled up my phone and checked the radar, and it looked like to the west things were going to clear up relatively quickly. So I decided to make one last stop before I went home, and I drove over to Stuyvesant Trails. And I get there, and the first part of the path that I normally go on is the horseshoe trail on the west edge of the park. And I could almost immediately hear a lot of these kinglets in the area. And so I just hung out there for a little bit, and what I see just like over right on the edge of the trail is one of these kinglets with its crest just showing. And he was so agitated. I don't know if he was trying to defend a territory from some of the other individuals that were there, or if it was me that he was agitated with seeing there. But I basically hung out at that spot on the trail for 10 minutes. And I just kept following it, like with my lens and trying to get these photos. And I got a number of different shots of this particular bird. And the one I submitted was my favorite one. It seemed like he hung still just for like an extra half second that time, so I could kind of get a good shot in focus. And I knew when I looked at that one on the computer that later that day that was a photo I was going to think about submitting to the contest later in the year. And I wouldn't have gotten that picture if I hadn't been a little bit patient to wait the weather out and to go back out once most of the rain had passed me over. So patience almost always pays off. So it's definitely worth just going out there and taking your time, and you never quite know what glimpse those birds will give you if you just wait them out long enough.
My name is Jan Lewis. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I took the picture of the red-breasted nuthatch at Lennea Park near Grand Haven. I went on a field trip with the Grand Rapids Audubon that was led by Steve Menard, who's a fabulous birder. We started in Muskegon State Park, and it was kind of slow. There wasn't a whole lot going on. We saw a few gulls and some cormorants. And at that point, the group decided that we were going to move on. And this was the week that the black-throated gray warbler had appeared in Ottawa County. And there were lots of reports. So the group decided as a whole that we would head down to Lennea Park to see if we could find this rare bird. So we did. We all shuttled down, and we were walking along the trail, and we saw a bunch of warblers around in the trees, and this red-breasted nuthatch was scavenging in the pine tree. And if there's a bird, I'm going to point my camera at it. So I did, and he was scavenging in amongst the pine catkins, and I just had my camera set on high shutter and was lucky enough to catch him with a bug in his beak. And then I actually have some pictures afterwards where you can see the legs sticking out of the beak. We did, after that, see the black-throated gray. who was dancing for us right in front of us, and I captured a few images of him as well. I guess my tip would be to study your birds, learn what their habitat is, what their behaviors are, so that you can anticipate seeing them in those habitats and hopefully capturing an image. Probably the most important thing is patience. It doesn't happen every time. So you just have to be ready and hope that you get the shot.
Hi, my name is Matt Ehinger. I live in Zeeland, Michigan. My picture was the white-eyed vireo that I captured in May of last year at Upper Mac. For the white-eyed vireo, I had heard it the day before, kind of in the same area, a little bit more off into the brush. And I wasn't able to get very good images of it because it was too dense, and I was able to see the bird, but really wanted to get a clear image where I could focus on the eye, which is its defining characteristic, and hopefully have a clear background. So I came back the next day, and in the parking lot, I immediately heard the bird when I got out. They have a kind of a high-pitched, distinctive noise, which I won't try to mimic because I can't do bird calls, but you can listen to it sometime. But so I kind of walked the parking lot and along the edge there, and I caught a glimpse of it, and I pitched a little bit, and he actually came right to me. So as you can see in the image, he landed on a low branch about eye level. Not a lot of stuff behind him, so I was able to capture a few shots when he was sitting relatively still, which is always a bonus. I hadn't seen a white-eyed vireo in Michigan before. I'd seen him in Florida, but so that was a fun surprise, and that's one of the reasons I chose him, because I liked the way the photo set up, and it wasn't a bird that probably a lot of people are ever going to see if they come to Michigan. If you go to Florida, you'll see them all the time, but not here. So I generally like to take pictures of birds that move fast, so whether they're warblers or vireos or that type of thing. So yeah, it was a fun experience, and I was glad I was able to capture it.
My name is Lennea Roon, and I'm from Byron Center, Michigan. I took the picture of the snowy owl in Coopersville, Michigan. I had to make a little trip out to Allendale, and I learned that there was a snowy owl reported out near Coopersville, so I thought I would take a drive out that way. I pulled up and immediately saw the snowy out in the field. It was on a little berm around the corn stubble. It stood out really easily. There was a red barn in the distance behind it, and I just thought that was so cool. I took a few pictures, and there was a party next door. They were snowmobiling up and down the road with sleds, and they were screaming and snowmobiling as they went by. So I thought, oh, this isn't going to stay here long. I'll snap a few pictures. And I had my camera set to just do a still shot, and all of a sudden it jumped up and started flying right at me. And I was hoping that I was going to be able to get a good shot. And I just took as many pictures as I could. And I quickly looked in the viewfinder and saw these big yellow eyes, and I could see that it was chasing doves. And that was just really cool. I was so excited to get that shot. It was definitely the shot of a lifetime. I was pretty ecstatic. I stayed for a little bit longer. It flew a couple more times, but then headed off across the field. And it was just a really exciting experience and a lot of fun. I think a lesson I learned from taking that photo, I assumed I was going to just be taking a still shot. So I probably would have turned my speed up a little bit more, and patience, but mostly just luck. That was pure luck, and you just never know what's going to happen with birds, and sometimes it's just great to be at the right place at the right time.
I hope you've enjoyed the stories behind each of the winning photos. If you'd like to purchase your 2026 Mug Club membership, which includes the mug featuring June Kuiper's Great Blue Heron photo, for just $25, the most convenient way to do that is online at miottawa.org/birding. You'll find the link in the description, or you can use this QR code. Purchased mugs can be picked up at the Nature Center at Hemlock Crossing County Park. Also, students in the environmental field class at the Career Line Tech Center created a calendar using both the winning photos and some of their other favorites. These can be purchased from the Career Line Tech Center by cash or check for $25 at the Nature Center. Lastly, I invite you to join us this winter for a Coffee with the Birds event at the Nature Center, where you can sip Aldea coffee or live streamed to your home thanks to Rick Veldman with Point of Light Media. For more information on Coffee with the Birds, the photo contest, and all things birding in Ottawa County, visit miottawa.org/birding. And remember, it's not too early to start taking photos for the 2026 photo contest. Photos taken of birds in Ottawa County between November 1st, 2025 and October 31st, 2026 are eligible. We're looking to add a variety of categories this time, so check back in early 2026 to see what categories we've added to the competition. Good luck.